Hello.
Hello, welcome to Liverpool, USA, Best Friends podcast because we're best friends.
Yeah. And this is a very special episode. I mean, they're all very special episodes.
Yeah,
But this one is very special because it is part two of our top 20 albums of our lifetime.
yeah,
And so today is going to be 10 to 1.
yeah. I'm very excited for this. I feel like our top 10 albums is very important.
Yeah. And also
Like,
so hard to choose
I
and
know.
not a a solid etched in stone, whatever thing. It's oh my gosh, this was so hard.
I know. I know. I've been thinking about my list a lot since the last time we recorded when we talked about 20 to 11. Because I'm like already second guessing everything, but I was like, no, I just need to leave it.
Yeah, I actually did not. I might have looked at it once because I
Mm-hmm.
knew that I was going to start thinking about it too much again. And
Yeah.
so I was like, nope, I'm gonna leave it like it was at the last episode, and it's just gonna stay the same, and we're gonna go from there. But I'm still pretty happy about it now that I'm looking at it again, so yeah.
Yeah. Me too.
Yeah.
I think there may be a couple of other repeats
Mm.
for us on this
Mm.
list. I think my favorite moment of the last episode was when we both ranked Panic at the Disco's Pretty Odd as number 14 of all
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. That
And we
was
were
pretty
like, mm-hmm,
good. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's correct,
Yeah.
apparently, for both of us.
Yeah. I'm noticing that my top 4 are really like could all be number 1. So,
Yeah,
the closer it gets to number 1, the more it's like, really, you want me to pick one
yeah,
of all time?
I
So,
feel that.
yeah.
Speaking of our number one choices, we do not know each other's list at all, except that we know each other pretty well, and obviously we know what's been on 20 to 11. So I have some hunches about what's going to be on your list, but I thought it would be fun if we both like made a guess at what each other's number one um album is before we start saying our top 10. And obviously we're not going to say it out loud right now
Yeah.
because no spoilers, but we've both consciously chosen something that we think is going to be our number one, each other's number one, I guess. And at the end, we'll reveal what our guess was before the
Yeah.
episode starts.
I have a guess for you, but it could also totally be like, I mean, I know you pretty well, but it could be I don't necessarily know what your number one top choice album of all time is, you know? It could be different than what I think. I don't think that the one that I have at number 1 is going to be what you're thinking, but I do feel like it could be in my top 4 because like I said, I really feel like my
Yeah,
top 4 is just my number 1. So,
yeah,
yeah. But we'll see.
that's fair. That's
Yeah.
fair. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like you very easily could guess what my number one is, but I don't know if you actually if it's the one that you're thinking of.
Yeah, we'll see.
So we shall see. But I thought it would be fun. So we'll reveal at the end what we're talking about right now, I guess.
Yeah. Okay.
So without further ado,
Yeah, okay.
let's get into it.
Did
Tell
you
me your
start?
number 10.
Okay, I'll go first. Okay.
Yeah.
My number 10 is Night Visions by Imagine Dragons.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know that I would have guessed that Imagine Dragons would appear on your list.
Yeah, I love that album. It was one of the many albums that became a car album. So, like, it was listened to in the
Yeah.
car with our mom a lot. And
Yeah.
it was shortly after it came out, because I remember when Radioactive came out and became huge. And at this point, I've played that song, like in bands and stuff. Like
Mhm.
so many times. I know that song way too well, but I
Yeah.
still
Yeah.
love it. It's great, and I remember discovering them when that song came out, and that was when I was still mostly like doing music on like YouTube. And so
Mhm.
I found most of their songs on YouTube, and that's how I got into them. And then just that album, like, I think it was what, closer to the end of high school and like the very beginning of college was when that album was like really my top at that time. And I had like a
Mhm.
poster on my wall and like everything like that. But yeah, super super awesome album. I think it still bops. I listened to it and it's still just I still get like the same emotions from it, and it's still, like very strong emotions, and I personally think that it holds up pretty well. So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think I've ever listened to that whole album. Like I've definitely heard a few songs from it, like not just Radioactive. Like I've definitely heard a couple.
Mhm.
But I don't know that I've actually like listened through the whole album.
Yeah, yeah. It's those car albums that are really easy to put on
Yeah.
this list because that's what we did, is you put
Yeah.
it in the thing and we never really skipped songs in the car. We would just
Yeah.
listen
Yeah.
to the whole album. So, yeah.
I definitely have a few that I would consider car albums that will be on my list as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So, with that, what is your number 10?
My number 10 is most, so I think for the most part, and I think this is true of yours too, that for the most part, our top 20 albums are older albums. They're not albums that have just like come out in the last little bit.
Yeah, yeah.
Which makes sense because, they're like albums that have meant a lot to us for a long time and stuff.
Yeah, and
but
they've built up their meaning over an amount of time.
yes.
Yeah.
I think this album is the newest album on my list, and it came out in 2019, I believe. And it is Tessa Violet's Bad Ideas.
Oh, I didn't quite realize how much that album was significant to you.
It, I think, is such a good album as a whole album. Like every single song on Bad Ideas is like a bop. It's like a pop bop, But I think as a whole, Bad Ideas, the album, is such a well done pop album. And I'm not the hugest pop music fan.
Mm-hmm.
But I listened to Bad Ideas when it came out because I liked Tessa Violet. And I liked the singles, and I listened to it as a whole album, and I was like, oh my God, I get it. Like, I get it. This, as a unit of work, is really impressive. The way that she was like able to do all of this like cool pop music stuff in a way that was like engaging to me as somebody who doesn't usually listen to pop. And yeah, I just think Tessa Violet is a really good musician. And
yeah. I think it's important to have pop. I mean, I guess Taylor Swift is probably the only truly pop album in my top albums. But yeah, is someone who is not huge on pop. I try not to be too critical and judgmental of pop music. Which I have my moments because I am very like edgy alternative. I only like angsty music or whatever.
Yeah.
But angsty rock music or whatever. But I think it's important to have a pop side, because most pop music is meant to be, like uplifting and enthusiastic and party-esque, and I think that is an important that's an important mood to have. So that's an important music to respect and to even maybe be into sometimes, because it's important to have some fun. And it's a genre that deserves to be respected, even though there's a lot of, arguably not as, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know, complicated or honest, deep. Yeah. It's still got, there's still some gems in there. So yeah, totally.
I will say one thing that Tessa Violet does really well is it's like definitively a pop album. Like Bad Ideas is a pop album, but there are these like alt influences on her work that I think is why it's a pop album that like appeals to me, you can hear some like 21 Pilots going on in there. You can hear some like, I don't know. Yeah, like I think like pop punk was an inspiration for her. Like, it's not a pop punk album at all, but you can tell that it was like an inspiration, at least a little bit, you know?
Yeah, totally. Okay.
So anyways, that's my number 10.
Okay. My number 9 is Save Rock and Roll by Fall Out Boy. Yeah.
I will say my number 9 is also a Fall Out Boy album.
Oh, good.
But it's not the same one.
Wow, okay, yeah. Where do I even start with Fall Out Boy? This album made it so high on the chart because it was actually the first Fall Out Boy album that I owned, and I actually got into Fall Out Boy. I don't remember if I said this on the last episodes, but I'll just like reiterate quickly, but I truly started becoming a fan when they came back. I heard the news when they had come back and they had My Songs Know What You Did in the Dark, and I heard that song, and that was still when I was when I was getting into rock and alternative genres. And I heard that song and I was like, oh, I really like this. And I remember like seeing the music video, and then I was learning that they were coming back, and I didn't even know that they were gone, you know? That's how little I knew about Fall Out Boy. I knew like a couple songs that were on the radio, but I didn't really know that much. And then we bought this album, and it became a car album, but it also became like a me album that I played like other times too. And I put it like on my little MP3 player that I had and listened to it all the time. And I was absolutely obsessed. And then I bought their older albums and listened to those, and they have different sounds. They have younger, more raw, more punk sounds. Their older albums do. Yeah. And now my preferred music sound, like I actually prefer their pre-hiatus music over their post-hiatus music, but this is the album that started it all, and I still love this album, and it's got the hits, and it will always be in the top 10 for me. Just always. It has to.
My number 9 Fall Out Boy album is Infinity on High.
Oh, yeah.
Which is my favorite Fall Out Boy album, I believe. Like, I think it just has to be. The energy, like the exact vibe that This Ain't a Scene, It's an Arms Race is exactly what I like about Fall Out Boy.
It's a little bit weird. It's got like really maybe confusing but like cool and meaningful lyrics. Thanks, Pete Wentz.
Yes.
And I totally get what you mean.
Yeah. And I mean, that energy is on Infinity on High like a lot. And yeah, I don't know. I just like my introduction to Fall Out Boy was the song Thanks for the Memories. So I think there's just something about Infinity on High that will just like never leave me.
And that one I think is a big one for a lot of Fall Out Boy fans. I know Infinity on High I think is regarded by a lot of people as like their introduction and like their favorite. And I totally get that. Yeah.
So that's my number 9.
Iconic album.
Love that album so much.
Yeah,
it's number 9 for me.
Awesome. And my number 8 is The Greatest Generation by the Wonder Years.
Yeah, that's such a good album.
Yeah, it is. It's tied for my favorite Wonder Years album because it was my favorite Wonder Years album, and then Sister Cities came out, and I was like, "Don't make me choose, please don't make me pick." Yeah, that album. I got into the Wonder Years closer to the end of high school when I was getting more into like the more underground pop punk. Because I got into like Fall Out Boy and, you know, Green Day and those bands first, which are the more, I don't know, above ground. They're the more like mainstream pop punk. And then I started getting more into the like the Warped Tour, a little bit more underground pop punk. And that is where the Wonder Years came in, and The Greatest Generation is just like, it's a defining album, I think, for that genre. The genre that they are a part of, that is like one of the defining just reigning albums of that genre and that like subculture. And it's so good. I can go on forever about it. We have multiple podcast where we talk about the Wonder Years. We have
We've
an
talked about the Wonder
entire
Years so freaking
podcast
much.
where we just talk about the Wonder Years, so I shouldn't even have to say more. You get it.
Yeah.
I get it. We get it. Yeah.
Yeah.
The Greatest Generation. Yeah.
I will say I have this like really distinct memory of the first time I listened to the song I Just Want to Sell at My Funeral, which is on that album, and it like wrecked me. It's like a 9-minute song.
Yeah.
And it just like destroyed me.
It's in my CD rotation right now in my car, because I have a 6-disc CD player in my car, and it's in rotation, and so I've been listening to it, you know, on my way like to and from work. And that song specifically, but a lot of songs on that album, I'm like, I can't cry before work. I can't walk into work crying because I was listening to I Just Want to Sell at My Funeral by the Wonder Years.
Yeah. That is like such a mood.
Yeah.
God.
Yeah. It's got my favorite song on it, which is There.
Oh.
Sorry.
Oh,
It's just got all the hits.
No,
but
I agree with you. That is a freaking good album.
Yeah. Your number 8.
My number 8 is Yourself or Someone Like You by Matchbox 20.
Aw, I don't know Matchbox 20 that well, but I know that you're really into them.
Yeah, this album specifically is like the Matchbox 20 album.
I believe it. Yeah. I've heard of it. I just don't know it very well. Yeah.
It's the album that has 3 a.m. on it. It's the album, I mean, it has like Real World, Back to Good. It has like a lot. And this album is like kind of 2 things for me. One, it's like really nostalgic and like really like reminds me of my parents, because my parents played this album, and like it reminds me of like, I don't know, like being a kid in the early 2000s. Like that was that's when I heard this album, you know? So it does that, but it also just like is extremely emotional to me as an adult. Because I listened to so much of Yourself or Someone Like You when I was a kid, and I didn't pay attention to the lyrics, and it was just like music that my parents listened to, like I don't know. But then like kind of becoming conscious of like what the lyrics actually mean, like as an adult or like as a teenager, like brought even more like new life into that album for me. Like I don't know, it is like probably one of my most like cried to albums. Which it's like crying to a Matchbox 20 album is like
it makes sense. I don't know,
but
to me it makes sense. It's that like soft rock, like it's emotional. I get it.
But yeah, Matchbox 20 does a lot for me, and this album specifically makes me more nostalgic than like most albums.
Yeah, they definitely have a nostalgic sound.
Yes.
Like for me too, we grew up, you know, we're very near the same age, and so, you know, we grew up in the same generation and listened to a lot of the same music as well growing up. And although there weren't full Matchbox 20 albums for me, like they were on the radio, like I knew some of their songs too, and I would definitely describe it as nostalgic for me as well. That's just, they just have a sound that is very specifically brings me back, you know, to when I was a child. And so I totally get that. And that's another example, what you were saying, of like an album that has continued to be significant because of the way that it's like grown or changed in meaning as you've gotten older. And so, yeah, totally.
Yeah. That one I think could be higher. Originally it was a lot higher on my list.
Okay.
But I brought it down, and so it's sitting at number 8.
Okay. Yeah, I know the 10 that is really just like a bowl of
every single one of these albums is just like formative and important. So
yeah, definitely. My number 7 is Sister Cities by the Wonder Years.
Wow.
Yeah. Because they're like tied for my favorite. I'm like, don't make me pick. But Sister Cities has a significance that's different than The Greatest Generation because it's newer. And it's very like, you and I have a very similar relationship with it because it came out when we were friends and right before we saw them together.
Yeah.
and when they were touring for it. And so you get a lot of the background for this album specifically because it came out when it was just very relevant to us specifically, because
Yes.
it's about being in lots of different places and having experiences in places that aren't home, and
Yeah.
all over the world and all over, and that's what we were doing. We were in a foreign country, and we
Mhm.
were having experiences that, even if they weren't the exact experiences that were being talked about on this album specifically, they were experiences that seemed to like parallel that in emotion. And so
Mhm.
that time period solidified this really as a top 10 album. But it's
Yeah.
also just so, I mean, it, number one, it holds up really well. I know it hasn't been out that long, but it's holding up. And
Yeah.
and it's so emotional, and I am a very emotional person.
Yeah.
And so it's vibes with my brain really well in a way that's just so, like, I don't know, like, I get it. I listen to this album and I'm like, I get it. This is
Yeah.
hitting all of the emotions and I understand. But
Yeah.
it's just musically, it's beautiful, and yeah, and that's that.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
I will say, I think if I didn't have a rule with myself about this list that I couldn't just put like every album by a given artist,
Yeah.
then that album would certainly be on my list because I love it so much. And it's even in my probably top 3 Wonder Years albums, but I did not let myself put every single Wonder Years album on this list.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I did not have as strict rules as you. I have 2 Wonder Years albums right next to each other on my list. So
yeah,
I was feeling it with my heart, not my brain.
Yeah, that's fair. That's really fair. I already talked about the Wonder Years once during the last episode, and I will be talking about the Wonder Years again later. So I think I'll leave it at that. But
okay.
Sister Cities is really important to me as well, and it's not on my list, but it is one of my top albums. I love it. I love it a lot.
Yeah.
My number 7 is an album that I know you will also know, but I don't think that it will be on your list. And that is 1X by 3 Days Grace.
Oh, it was almost on the list.
Yeah.
But the thing with that album is, in all honesty, it's more significant for my sister than it is for me. She was the 3 Days Grace twin. And I love 3 Days Grace. And I love that album, and I totally understand why it's on your list. But it wasn't quite as significant for me with like my path of music in life, I guess. I don't know. But like my sister, I would not doubt it. If she put it on her top 10 list, I'd be like, yeah, that makes sense. Because she was like, that was her thing. But yeah, I get it.
Yeah, this was a car album for me. I remember, my mom was like the one who was into 3 Days Grace, and then she bought 1X when it came out, and we listened to it in the car constantly. And I believe this was the album with which my sister learned the F word.
Oh.
Because I believe she was like singing along, and then my mom was like, just so you know, that is like the F word. My sister was like, okay.
That's so funny.
So yeah, I don't know. It's really interesting. I listened to 1X a lot as a child, which is a weird time to listen to 1X by 3 Days Grace.
Yeah.
You're like 8. But I did. And I knew every single word to every single song when I was like 8.
That's so fantastic.
And then I kind of, like stopped listening to it because it was just like a CD that my mom played in the car, and I, went on my own music journey. And then I kind of circled back, as like a teenager and like in early college to like kind of going back through music that I, like old music that I had like listened to as a kid, and you know, I was very much still in that genre of music, but I hadn't listened to anything that was like mom music. But my mom likes good music, so like I need to just, you know, I was like I needed to just go back and listen to it again. And then I was like, oh my god, 1X is so good. Like that album just is like it's again very nostalgic for me, and also like I think it's just holds up as a very good album within that genre.
Yeah.
I don't exactly know what genre 3 Days Grace is, but
I don't know, because it is. Like, I know it fits into a definitive genre because there's other bands that are in that, you know, that genre.
Yeah.
But so like I get it, yeah. But it definitely is. It's like the peak of its time. Like when that came out. Yeah.
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 Yeah. So 1X by 3 Days Grace is very, very important and foundational, I think, to my like music taste as it stands now.
100%. Yeah. My number 6 is Something to Be by Rob Thomas.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
This, do you remember in England, this was one that I was like, this is a really important album to me from my childhood, and we're going to sit in my dorm and I'm going to make you listen to the whole thing.
Yeah, we did do that.
Yeah.
It's a good album. Like, I'm not, you know, it doesn't hold as much significance to me, obviously, but like, it's a good album. Like, it is a good album. I'll give you that.
Yeah, it's one of those like light rock of that, you know, of the like Matchbox of that era, you know, like it came from like the same, it's that like rock, like light rock with the poppy twist to it, you know, like radio rock stuff. And that was one that was played in the car a lot and was played like on our little CD players a lot. You raising your hand?
Rob Thomas is the lead singer of Matchbox 20.
Oh my god, yes, he is. I totally
I like didn't like the neurons didn't fire like fast enough, but then I was like, wait.
Yeah, wait. Oh my god, I totally forgot. I knew that. That's so hilarious. The significance that this man has in our childhood.
I know, honestly, Rob Thomas. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. So yeah, but this album, it's very fun. It's very definitely where some of my, you know, this type of music like rock roots comes from, is listening to this album growing up. That and like what did we had that like Puddle of Mud album. I don't even remember what it's called. Yeah. It's not on my list because I don't really remember it that much as an album, but like I remember that I listened to it. Also how I learned curse words as a child.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, so this one, and it's so high on the list because it was significant for so many years, and I still love it. I'll hear any song from that album and I'm like, I get it. This is fun. This is good stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, I love that album. So yeah, that's my number 6.
I love that.
Yeah.
My number 6 was significant in high school for a minute and then not for a while, and then became significant to me again in the last like 4 years. And that is The Sunset Tree by the Mountain Goats.
Oh, another Mountain Goats. Okay.
Yes, this is my top Mountain Goats album. And it's an early Mountain Goats album, kind of. I mean, they have so freaking many. But this came out in like 2005, I think. And I listened to a couple of songs from this album in high school. This Year is on that album, and Love, Love, Love is also on that album. And so I had listened to those two songs and been like really emotionally attached to them, but I don't think I was like emotionally attached to the entire album, mostly just like a couple of songs. And I know I've said this like a bunch of times, but in high school, I didn't like pay attention to the music that I listened to. I just like listened to things, and then it just, so I like vaguely was like, I don't know, I like this one song, and I like knew the words to that song, but I like probably couldn't have even told you that it was by the Mountain Goats, you know? Like I just kind of knew this song, and then I kind of rediscovered that I am into the Mountain Goats kind of like later. When I started paying attention to more things, And then I remember I was like, oh yeah, something about the mountain goats, and my dad was like, oh my god, I love the mountain goats. And so we both just like liked the mountain goats but didn't know that each other liked the mountain goats.
That's really funny.
Yeah, and then I've gotten like more and more into them in the past like probably 4 years or so. And yeah, I think this album is their best album, and it is very emotional. And the song this year is not the most popular Mountain Goat song, but one of the most popular Mountain Goat songs. And it just like is that popular for a good reason, you know, like it really is something.
Good. And I still need to listen to the Mountain Goats.
Yeah, I sent you that playlist.
You did, and then I didn't. Oh. But I will. Yeah. It'll still be there. I'll still be able to like search for it. Yeah. So number 5. Okay, my number 5 is 21st Century Breakdown by Green Day.
Yeah.
Which was on your list, right?
Yeah, it was my number 11.
Yeah. This is my favorite Green Day album. And I mean, we talked about it with you. It's very, it has that 100%, it has that theatrical quality that I love so much in my favorite music. It's one of those like concept albums, not as much as American Idiot, but like 100% it definitely is. And yeah, it just has so much dynamic. It's so dynamic, you know, it's got a lot of different stuff going on, and I love that. And I absolutely love Green Day, like one of my favorite bands of all time. So significant to me, so significant to the genre, you know, very just, I mean, we know. You know, I know.
I agree completely.
Yeah. So 21st Century Breakdown is definitely up there and will always be up near the top of my list. Definitely like one of the albums that when I decided that it was one of my favorite albums of all time in high school, like wanted a tattoo, you know, like a lot of these albums were like, there was a tattoo concept in high school that I would have gotten if I could have. I would get a Green Day tattoo. Maybe wouldn't be the same one that I wanted to get in high school, but you know.
I feel that.
Yeah. So, yeah, 21st Century Breakdown.
Important album for sure.
Yes, 100%.
My number 5, also important. And it's Red by Taylor Swift.
Oh, it's your Taylor Swift. Okay.
Yeah.
We talked about this when we were talking. We talked about Taylor Swift a while ago. How I thought that Red was your favorite album. I think you've said that before.
Yeah. It is. Yeah. Red is my favorite Taylor Swift album. It always has been. Like since it came out, it's been my top Taylor Swift album. And I think the reason I like Red so much is because, I mean, Taylor Swift does not get very alt in any way because she's a pop artist and also was like a country artist for like a little while.
Yeah.
And maybe with her new stuff, she's like a little indie, but it's all very pop. And Red is also pop, but the most alt that Taylor has ever gotten was on Red. Like there's electric guitars in Red.
Yeah.
You know, and so I would say that, you know, if I was being kind of flippant, I would say maybe that Red is a pop punk album if you really think about it.
I mean, I would say it could be like rock and roll.
Yeah, it's a little
electric guitars.
It has some like, and I don't know if
rock,
it's like
pop
actually has emo influences because I don't know if Taylor Swift like actually listened to any emo music, but I think that you can draw some parallels if you think about it. You know what I mean? Like, Red, the lyrics on Red are so pop punk. Like if a man was singing the same lyrics, it would be a pop punk album. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, totally, yeah. That's a really good way to put it.
So yeah, I think that's why I like Red so much. It also was the album that I listened to on repeat after my first breakup in high school. Um,
Yeah.
so I'm sure that like adds to why this has
Contributes.
so much significance. But Red is a breakup album, and it's a very good breakup album. And there's so much emotion in a breakup album that like I just can't help but put it at number 5. It's my top 5 album of all time.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
I get it. So my number 4 album on this list, which this is where it starts to get, these are all
Yeah.
my number 1 really.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
my number 4 album is From Under the Cork Tree by Fall Out Boy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. This is my favorite Fall Out Boy album.
Yeah.
I think I talked about last time, uh Folie à Deux is what I believe is Fall Out Boy's best album musically.
Yeah.
Save Rock and Roll is the album that is significant to me because it's when I got into them.
Yeah.
And From Under the Cork Tree is my favorite Fall Out Boy album of like my whole Fall Out Boy experience.
Yeah.
This is the one that I like remember specifically. There were albums that with my little boombox in my room that I would like sit too close to it and have my albums playing and just be like in my angsty, you know, high school girl angst. We get it.
Yes.
And this was one of those albums that I listened to many a time. Love it so much. It's just like I don't know. This like it's really just whatever it is about this album specifically, this genre specifically is just the best for my ears specifically.
Yeah.
Is this album From Under the Cork Tree. Yeah.
That's fair.
Awesome.
I mean that album is very good.
We could really have a whole episode where I talk about this album. So I won't talk too because there's so many little things in it.
I would love that. I would love to like do like a track by track analysis of
that would be awesome. Yeah.
That would be amazing.
It's really cool because actually I didn't realize this actually until a lot later, because I just like didn't know a lot of the movies and everything, but a lot of titles of the songs on this album are like famous movie quotes or like kind of famous movie quotes, which I think is kind of fun. And then I realized that they actually have stuff like that in a lot of their music. Up until having like a song called Uma Thurman, you know, they have a lot of stuff that's pulled from movies, which I think is really fun and really interesting. But yeah, From Under the Cork Tree is just like I wish that I was a teenager when they were playing Warped Tour and probably playing songs from this album, and I was there. Like that's my time machine. Like wish. Yeah, is to see like a show of From Under the Cork Tree Fall Out Boy show. I would absolutely love that. Yeah. So yeah, that's my number 4. What is yours?
My number 4 is an extremely important album to me. Like I cannot overstate how important this freaking album is to me. And it's Some Nights by Fun.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
This album was the first album that I liked that nobody showed me. You know what I mean? Like I found it myself. And I found it before Fun was like famous and popular.
Because it has like the title track song is the song that made them famous, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and they only have 2 albums out. They only like after Some Nights they stopped being a band. But I found this album really early, and it was like before We Are Young like got really famous because that song's on this album too. Yeah. But it was like before that, and I found this album and I started listening to it, and I was so into it. Like I listened to it on repeat, like over and over and over again. Every single song, I was like emotionally attached to every single song on that album. And then they announced that they were going to play a show in Jacksonville, Oregon.
Oh, wow.
Which is, I mean, no band ever comes to Southern Oregon. But Fun wasn't a big band. Like they weren't playing like big shows. And so they came to the Brick Gardens, and I was like, oh my god, I need to go to this concert. Like, not only was this band like so important to me, this album was so important to me, but no band ever that I had ever liked came to Southern Oregon. And I was in 8th grade, and or it was like the summer right after 8th grade, I think, that they were coming, and I was like, I have to go to this concert. My mom was like, I don't want to go to the concert.
Oh.
And I was like, no, no, you don't understand. Like, I have to go to this concert. And so, and I'm not exactly sure how this happened, but somehow I convinced my mom to just let me go with one of my friends.
Wow.
To this concert. And this is my first concert that I ever went to, like, without my mom there, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I hadn't really been to a lot of concerts because I lived in Southern Oregon where there was no concerts.
Yeah, yeah. And you're only in 8th grade, you know, so.
Yeah.
That's, yeah.
But this was like my first concert, my like first real concert. It was also like the first album, the first band that I was like deeply into, that like I wasn't into because my mom told me to be into them, or like because it was like a popular band that everyone was into or something like that. Like, it was mine, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I was like, since then, the album Some Nights by Fun has been like deeply important to me as an album. Like, every single song on that album holds so much nostalgia and meaning, and like lyrically it was like kind of also.
Remember the show?
Yeah.
Is it good?
yeah I was kind of far back because it was like on this like grass. Like, we were sitting on the lawn because the tickets for the Brick Garden are really expensive, even though it's not a big venue.
Oh.
So if you want to be down by the stage, it's like expensive. And I was like in 8th grade. So
yeah.
Yeah, so I got like the cheapest like lawn ticket that I could. And we were like in the back, and I remember that they opened, their very first song was Carry On, which at the time was my favorite song on that album.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like peak emotions for like 8th grade Allie. Like,
that's so sweet.
It was, yeah, I don't know. I cannot like exaggerate how much
I love
Some
that for
Nights
you.
is like.
Good.
Yeah.
The only other song I know on that album is One Foot, which I like randomly heard in high school or whatever on like Pandora, and I was like, well, this is going on the playlist forever. So
yeah,
that's the only other.
That whole album is like bangers only.
Yeah, yeah, I believe it. Yeah.
There's also a song on that album like that's about sex, and I just like did not know it was about sex, and for like a really long time, for like years and years and years, and then I was like, wait a second.
Yeah, I think there's too many songs like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
But yeah, that's my number 4. Really, honestly, could be number 1.
Yeah. We're in that territory now. Yeah.
Yeah.
So my number 3, with that in mind, is Welcome to the Black Parade by My Chemical Romance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I knew this was going to be top.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just, I mean, listen. What can I say? No one has, no one ever will, no one can do it like them.
Yeah.
And that's just it. That's all I can say. And this album is obviously, it's their peak album. And now that they're releasing music again, oh my god, I can't believe I'm even saying that. Let's just take a moment.
Yeah.
What? Hello?
I know.
My favorite band is a band again? This is insanity to me. I can't even comprehend this. We can have an entire episode about that. I can speak for an entire episode about just that. So, yeah. But this album is their musical peak. It is musically their best. It's musically their best, and it's my favorite. And it just has like the angst, it has the theatricality, it has the musicality, it has, it just has it.
It just has.
Yeah, I have too many thoughts to even put, I love this album a lot, and I totally regret it was like freshman year of high school or something like that, and I didn't know My Chemical Romance yet, unfortunately, but it was the one time that our band director ever did this, and she was trying to figure out more music to play in Pet Band, and we were like looking at our options, and there were these two kids that were like, one of them was in my class, one of them was a little bit older than me, and I respect her so much, and I feel bad for not. Anyway, so one of the songs was Welcome to the Black Parade, and I had no idea what that was. I'm like, what? I don't know. Like, what is that? And they were like, please, please, let's play Welcome to the Black Parade. And they were like the only two kids that really wanted it. But we were like, I don't know what everyone else thought, but I was like, I don't know that song. I don't know what it is. It's probably something weird if you two like it. So I thought it was, I mean, I don't know what I was expecting. I was actually expecting something not rock. I don't know what I was expecting, but it wasn't until literally a few years later, maybe, we discovered My Chemical Romance literally months after they broke up.
Oh my god, yeah.
So it was like way later I finally listened to them and then listened to this song, and I was like, I regret everything.
Yeah.
This would have been amazing to play in that band. So yeah, but this album just like really does it for me and will always be in my top, if not 10, then like my top 3 albums just forever.
Yeah.
Because that's how much this means to me. And
it's formative. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good word for it. Yeah, they really defined something with this album, like defined, I don't know, a generation or a genre or whatever. Like no one else is like that, and I don't think anyone else needs to be or needs to try to be or anything like that, and because it's just like, yeah. But anyway, I could stop there because, like, we could just talk about it forever. But yeah, so that is my number 3. What is your number 3?
My number 3 is Suburbia, I've Given You All and Now I Am Nothing by the Wonder Years. I had to think very long and hard about this. I don't know, I had never thought about what is my favorite Wonder Years album because all of them are my favorite. But I made myself choose because I was like, my top 10 can't be like just them.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Just like simply listing every single album. But yeah, I think this is partially informed by seeing this entire album played live twice in the past couple of months.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think as an album, like with like listening from top to bottom, this is one of their strongest in terms of like cohesiveness.
Okay.
Yeah, I really honestly could argue that any Wonder Years album is like the best Wonder Years album. So I don't really even have like a strong like this one is so much better than other Wonder Years albums. You know what I mean? But it's just like it's a very good album.
Yeah.
And I think it's a really good album, like I said, like as a whole, like when you listen to it from front to back, lyrically, there's just like a lot of stuff on this album that like hits me, and
it's so personal, especially all of their music is very personal and very specific, but especially their earliest stuff is so specifically personal to them, which in some ways could make it difficult to be attached to because it's talking about experiences that in places that you have nothing about. But I feel like it kind of does the opposite, and it makes you somehow be into it more, even though you don't know the people who they're because they name specific people, specific places, restaurants, and you're like, I've never been there before, but somehow I know exactly what you're talking about.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think, like, I mean, one of my favorite Wonder Years songs of all time is Local Man Ruins Everything, which is on this album. And then separately, I think that one of the absolute best album openers of all time is Came Out Swinging. Like that song being the first track on an album is just like, that album has to be in my top 3. You know what I mean? Like it just has to.
Yeah. I think the reason that album isn't in my top is because of like a similar reason. So like Came Out Swingin' is one of the first Wonder Years songs I heard, one of my favorites, one of the most significant, obviously.
Mhm.
Um but that's one of the albums where I would say like it's got songs on it that are in my top songs, but as an album experience, I don't it's not in like my top albums.
Interesting.
So like
Okay.
as individual songs, but like not necessarily as I don't quite have the amount of significance like as with that album as as an experience in its entirety for it to be like
Mhm.
in my top albums. But
Got
like
it.
certain songs off of that album, like Came Out Swingin', are in like list of top songs.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I
yeah,
could see that. I could see that.
yeah,
Yeah, I don't know. There's something about this album. I think, like I said, yeah, I really could argue that any album by the Wonder Years is my top favorite album. So I just
yeah,
had to choose one to put on
yeah.
here. But yeah, I think this album is
Oh yeah,
so freaking good, so freaking good.
yes, yes,
And I limited myself to only saying that about the Wonder Years. So
yeah.
I will.
Okay. Okay. So, number two. My number
Yeah,
two album of my life is Clockwork Angels by Rush.
I knew we were getting some Rush in here at some
Yeah.
point.
Yeah, you knew it was going to happen at some point. I
Yeah,
almost had another one on here, but the thing with Clockwork Angels specifically is because I've been listening to Rush since probably before I was born. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if it was like I know it was played in the house while I was
yeah,
like in the womb. So like, I heard it before
yeah.
I was born. So I've been hearing it my entire life from my father. And I love Rush, and I think one of the reasons why I do is because I've been listening to them since forever. And so it's just like my brain was like just developed to love Rush. And
Yeah.
um but this album came out when I had grown old enough to like I was in the age of like seeking out my own music and listening to albums and paying attention to the artists I was listening to and really getting into music in that way. And this album came out. So it was like the first Rush album that I could like pursue on my own and
Mm-hmm.
like go out and like I didn't buy it like on a CD, but I could like look it up and like listen to it all on my own and uh and be like conscious and like follow them. I did social media. Did I have a social media? I don't know, but I like knew it was coming out and I could like
Yeah,
listen to it on my own.
yeah.
So this album was actually maybe the first Rush album that I had heard front to back because
Mm.
all the rest of my Rush experience was hearing kind of like here and there, like in concerts
Yeah,
or in, like videos or like hearing a song here and there, but I didn't actually do a lot of just like listening to Rush albums front to back.
yeah.
And my dad didn't really do that either. He didn't really like play albums front to back like while we were at his house or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So that was this song. I like remember the build up to its release. I remember the singles. I remember listening to it front to back. And I think it's musically so absolutely brilliant. I know that like seasoned Rush fans would probably disagree with me because they have a very different experience of Rush. And I think Rush peaked in their like musical significance for most of society probably like in the 80s,
Mm-hmm.
and this song was released in the 2000s. So, that's a very different time. Like people aren't making music in the mainstream that sound like this anymore. But this album had more of like they were not a band to stay in the 70s or whatever. Like they didn't
Mm-hmm.
make the same music over and over again. And they're
Yeah.
musically very talented, very so incredibly talented. And this album had elements of modern rock in it.
Mm-hmm.
And which I think is part of what appealed to me so much is because I'm a modern child, like
Yeah.
modern
Yeah.
rock sound is what I'm into and what I'm growing up with. And so this was like the band that I had grown up with and were like basically my gods, that my dad loves. But it was an album that had another level of significance for me.
Yeah.
And there was a book that came with it, that the drummer and another author wrote together, and it's kind of like the songs are, it's like a little bit, I actually don't know what came first, if the songs or the book came first, but it's basically, it's a story that like goes along with the songs on the album, and it's very like steampunk-esque, which I love, and I was very into it at the time as well, very into the steampunk stuff. And the lyrics are, I mean, Neil is a genius with lyrics, and he always has been. They're beautiful. And so yeah, this album is just absolutely spectacular, absolutely beautiful. And just for all those reasons and more, it has to be at the very top of my list.
Wow.
Yeah.
My number 2 is American Idiot.
Yep.
By Green Day.
Also, so incredible musically, a totally different genre, obviously.
Yeah.
But a trio, only 3 guys, which is the same as Rush.
Yeah,
but
that's true.
Yeah. I mean, this album defined a generation, I think. I could say that. Like, it really did.
It did. I know I talked about this when I talked about Green Day before, with, I think, our top artists of all time. But I have just like this literal like pivotal core memory of the day American Idiot came out, and we went to the store and we bought it. This was like my first concept of a No Skips album. My mom played it in the car, and we were like, oh my God. Like, I remember my mom and I experiencing American Idiot on the day it came out together in the car, and it being like I feel like saying it was life-changing is like dramatic, but it like was.
No, I get it. Yeah.
You know, like listening to American Idiot for the first time the day it came out was like life-changing for me as a human. Like, I am not the same.
Yeah.
You know, and yeah, I think that is what, you know, like a large part of the reason I like the music I like is because of Green Day. And specifically, I like Green Day because I listened to American Idiot the day it came out, you know, and like, understanding like what a concept album was, and like, you know, they do the thing on American Idiot where each like there's like movements, you know.
Yeah.
And that was like mind-boggling.
Brand new
to
concept.
Me.
Yeah.
I don't remember how old I was when American Idiot came out, but like young. And so all of these things that Green Day did, not only were they like brand new to me as like a child, you know, but they were like, a lot of these things were like not brand new, but like new to the genre, you know, like they were doing like new things. And then not like it was that, and it was also like, of course, my first experience with like seeing an album like that, you know, or like listening to music like that, and like listening to political music. Like, I had never listened to like music with like a strong political message, which I think is hilarious that it's like largely my mom who brought American Idiot to me, and that's just a statement for another time, I guess. I mean, like, I just had never like understood like what political music was. I had never really understood like what the punk scene is about until American Idiot. I don't know. American Idiot means so freaking much to me. I think it's like one of the best albums like of our lifetime.
Honestly, I have to agree with you. I really think, and the only reason why 21st Century Breakdown is on my playlist and not American Idiot is because for me and like my life experience, 21st Century Breakdown, like that was one of the first Green Day albums that I like bought and like listened to all the way through and everything like that. So like for my specific lifespan, that one is more significant to me. But I think in just like the entirety of American society, American Idiot is one of the most significant albums of our modern time.
Yeah.
Just simply. Yeah. That is bold, but I agree.
True. I mean, yeah. We're on the same page.
Yeah.
Before you say your number 1, I have to say I don't know what it is.
Yeah. I don't know what yours is either.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Because my guess is one that you already said now.
Yeah.
So, anyways, I'm really curious what it is.
Okay.
So I'll just let you say it.
Do you want to say our guesses first, or do you want to
Yeah,
just say... Okay.
What was your guess for my number one?
My guess for your number one, and you don't have to have any reaction to this, I'm pretty sure I'm wrong, and it was literally just the first thing that came into my head, so it's really just a guess. And it really has, like, not a lot of actual, like, evidence. But it's Sister Cities by the Wonder Years.
Okay.
Yeah. What was yours for me?
My guess for you was From Under the Cork Tree, but you already said it.
Oh, that's such a good guess, actually. That's a really impressive guess. Because it really, I mean, like I said, really you kind of got it right, because all of my top 4 is really my number 1, and that was my number 4, so yeah. But my number 1 on this list is actually Louder Now by Taking Back Sunday.
Oh.
Yeah. This
like
album,
now that you say that, it does make sense, but I would not have guessed that.
Yeah. This album for me is, I decided to make my number 1 for a lot of reasons. One of the very small reasons is that I could not decide what to put at number 1, so that this became the one. But this album for me is, it was really my first album where, and there were albums before this, obviously, that are significant to me as an album experience, but this was the album where I first realized that an album as an experience is important to me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes total sense, yeah.
I had already bought a lot of CDs before I bought this album, but this album was the first CD that I got at Everyday Music on Sandy in Portland, which is officially closed now, which was a very significant CD store for me. I bought many CDs at that store. And this was the first one that I bought, and every single time I went to that store, the first thing that I would do was go straight back to the Taking Back Sunday section and get a CD that I didn't already own until I already had all of them, which didn't take that many times because they didn't have all of the CDs there. So so that became a little mini sort of ritual for me, but this was the first one, and I only knew one other Taking Back Sunday song before I bought this CD, and it wasn't even on this CD, and it was just I was just oh, and I used to be like that. I'm not like this as much with CDs anymore, but when they were my main mode of listening to music, I was like this a lot, where I would be oh, I've heard of this band and this CD's inexpensive, I'm gonna buy it because I want to hear it. And so this was one of those CDs, and it just became, it has such a raw pop punk sound, and I don't really like using pop punk this loosely because I really don't feel like it is. Are they screamo? I don't know, because screamo has a definition, but they're in that that scene. They were in that emo, what we call the emo scene, and that specific brand of alternative rock, punk, whatever it is. And so, but this was at the time that I bought it, it was even more underground. I didn't know anything on it, and it was some of it was a little bit of almost a shock for me because it's how raw it is. But it just has this as an album. I still don't even think I could tell you the names of all of the songs on this album, because how I've experienced this album most of the time to this day is as an album, which is one of the reasons why it's number 1 on my list, is because this is a list of my top albums of my life, and I one of the main things that I judged was, what does this album as the full experience, top to bottom, mean to me? How much does this mean to me? And so that's why this made it to number 1, is it started a lot of things for me. It was one of the milestones in my building of how I experience music and what music means to me and what kind of music I like, etc. And I have it signed now. I saw them on tour when they were playing. They were playing 2 nights in each city, and they flipped a coin to play their first or their second album in full that night. And this is their second album. And the night that I saw them, the coin picked the first album, which is a great album, and I love it a lot, but I will always be a little bit sad that I will never see this album played in its entirety. And I couldn't go the second night, because I had to play with the symphonic band, but anyway.
Yeah.
But the next day I got to go in the morning to Music Millennium in Portland, and they were doing a signing, and so I had them sign this album. I had maybe the most awkward interaction I've ever had with a band, trying to tell them how much this album meant to me.
Yeah.
But I think it's okay. It was just like, I don't know, it was just awkward. Probably more to me than it was for them, honestly.
Oh,
And I don't
yeah.
know. It was
Yeah.
just like, but anyway, it would, yeah, I think that, I think it will start to become too long-winded if I keep trying to go on about this. I think
Yeah.
that is the like shortest summary I could say of why this album is number one on this list. So
I
yeah.
know Make Damn Sure from this
Yeah,
album.
because that's like
and
one of
that's
their
it.
one of their top
Yeah.
songs. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
only know like a couple. I know like probably 5 Taking Back Sundays songs,
Mhm.
but I was never like deep into them. But I feel like I need to listen to this album now now that I know that it's your
Now
favorite
this-
album.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
it's definitely like formative of
Yeah.
yeah, a lot. So yeah, with
Yeah.
that, what is your number one?
My number one, which as soon as I say it, I'm sure you'll be like, "Oh yeah."
Yeah.
And it's Life's Not Out to Get You.
Oh yeah, you did say last time you were like, that's on my list too. Oh, that's so sweet that it's at number one. I
Yeah.
totally understand that.
And it just is. Like,
Yeah.
I
At a certain
love
time,
this freaking album.
yeah, at a certain time in my life, that would have been my number one too. Because I
It
totally
just-
get it.
It speaks to me, and specifically, I mean, every song on that album speaks to me because it's about like, you know, not letting life like get you, you know, like
Yeah.
sometimes life is shitty and then you have to just like be okay. And like I found this album like really when I needed to hear that, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Because I knew December from this album before. And then I think I had heard a couple more songs from this album sort of just like in passing, but I never like listened to the album. But then in a very transitional period of my life, like about when we were in England and like about that time was when I listened to this album and like understood that it was by Neck Deep and like, you know,
Yeah.
like actually like listened to it. And hearing it as an album, I think really spoke to me. And then when I was like at probably my lowest part of like my life so far
No.
was like I listened to this album a lot. And so yeah, it's like extremely emotionally, you know, tied to me. But I also think like it's just a very good like pop punk album. Like I think it's really like we've said this before, but this is Neck Deep's peak.
Yeah. And I also genuinely think it's underrated in this scene. This album is really good.
It's so freaking good. Every
Yeah.
single song is a banger.
Yeah.
And it's like it toes the line between being like really emo and like really like sad lyrics.
Mm-hmm.
And but it's also not like too far in the other direction where it's like cheesy.
Yeah.
You know, but it like toes that line pretty well, I think. And yeah, and I think I could say without a doubt that Smooth Seas Don't Make Good Sailors is my favorite song like of my life.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's very volatile.
That's a hard thing to make. Yeah, I get that, but yeah.
But I would say on most given days, Smooth Seas Don't Make Good Sailors is my favorite song, and that song is on this album. And then I love all of the other songs like also so much.
Yeah.
So
lyrically, it's fantastic. Musically, it's fantastic. It's got a lot of really good hooks. Each song stands out really well. It's memorable. Yeah. I really wish that you could have been there because I was a fan of Neck Deep before this album came out. And I really wish you could have been there when it came out because I remember listening to this album when it came out and being like, I already knew they peaked. I was like, this is it. It was so good. And I saw them at Warped Tour for the when they were playing songs off this album.
Yeah.
And yeah. So like totally get it. Definitely an album of all time.
It really is.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
really good. I think my
Yeah.
favorite off of it might be Can't Kick Up the Roots because
That song
it has that
gets to me.
like I relate a lot to like the coming from a small town feel
Yeah.
and even though pop punk is all about wanting to get out of your small town, this is like, yeah, I like need to get out, but also I'm tied here and I'll always be tied here because this is where I came from, and there's just that like community feeling that you know will like always be a part of you, and I'm like, I get that.
Yeah.
I get that, you guys. Yeah.
I think that's like why I love this album so freaking much, because it's like all of the pop punk like sentiment, you know, it's like, oh, I freaking hate my hometown. Oh, I'm like sad.
Life sucks. Yeah.
You know, but it's not just like wallowing in that. Like,
yeah,
all of the lyrics on this album are about like, well, yeah, like, but we gotta keep going.
Yeah,
bitch.
life
like,
sucks, but
on.
like my friends are awesome. The community I'm in is awesome. Music is awesome.
Yeah,
like,
and it's like, I hate my hometown, but like, it's who like raised me. You know, and like, I like am heartbroken about like my relationship, but like I hope she's happy. You know, and like, and like sometimes like life is gonna kick you down, and then you have to just like remember that you gotta like keep going. You know. And I love this album. I know that we could keep talking about it for forever, as we could with all of these albums.
We genuinely need to have episodes where we just, let's totally do this. We should have episodes where we literally just talk about an entire album, like any random album that we choose.
I think honestly, that could be like a direction that this podcast just goes in, to be honest.
Yeah, because there's so much more I could say about this album too, in terms of me and Neck Deep and like music in general, and there's a lot. Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Now that we're coming away with this with some listening assignments. And
I shall be going back through your list and doing some listening for sure.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, until next time, this was so much fun.
It was.
I definitely agree we need to do more music episodes, because our best episodes are when we talk about music.
Yeah.
Because that's who we are as people.
Yeah.
And so, until next time, I love you.
I love you too.
All right. Goodbye.
Bye.